The three main layers of the skin are the epidermis, the dermis, and the hypodermis. The epidermis is superficial to the dermis, and it's made of keratinized stratified squamous epithelial tissue. The dermis is directly under the epidermis, and it's made of areolar and dense irregular connective tissue. The hypodermis is below all of these, and it's the subcutaneous layer. It's deep to the skin, and it's not technically part of the skin, but it anchors the skin to the underlying structures, and it's made of adipose connective tissue, which is fat. In the epidermis, there are four cells typically found: keratinocytes, melanocytes, dendritic cells, and tactile cells. The keratinocytes' function is to produce the fibrous protein keratin. They're continuously dividing, they have quick turnover, and they're colorless. Their location is that they are most of the cells of the epidermis. The melanocytes' function is to protect the apical surface of the keratinocyte nucleus from UV damage and to produce melanin. Their location is mostly in the stratum basale. The dendritic cells' function is they arise from bone marrow and they have macrophages, which are key activators of the immune system, and they are located in the stratum spinosum. Tactile cells' function are they have a spiky shape. Each cell is associated with a nerve ending, which creates a Merkel disc, and they have sensory touch receptors. Their location is where the epidermis and dermis meet. The keratinocyte cells begin in the stratum basale, which is the bottom layer of the epidermis. They are actively mitotic cells that are pushed upwards as they divide, and they're pushed upwards through the stratum spinosum into the stratum granulosum. And when they're in the stratum granulosum, the cells flatten, the nucleus disintegrates, and keratinization begins. All cells above this layer will die because they become filled with keratin and they're too far from dermal capillaries. Above this layer is the stratum lucidum, which is present only in thick skin, but when it is present, it is just a few rows of the dead flat keratinocytes after they've moved through the stratum granulosum. And by the time they reach the top layer, which is the stratum corneum, they are anucleate sacs filled with keratin, so they're basically just a membrane that's filled with keratin. Stratum corneum contains 20 to 30 layers of these dead cells. The dermis is made up of two layers, the reticular layer and the papillary layer. The papillary layer is superficial to the reticular layer, and it is areolar connective tissue with collagen, elastic fibers, and blood vessels. It is loose tissue because these bumps need space, and some contain capillary loops and touch receptors, free nerve endings. These are the dermal papillae, which stick into the epidermis above, which is this like tan. And they lie atop dermal ridges that cause epidermal ridges, and these ridges are called friction ridges, which is your fingerprint. It enhances gripping ability, contributes to your sense of touch, and the pattern creates your fingerprints. And the reticular layer is irregular dense connective tissue, which is nourished by the cutaneous plexus, which is a blood vessel, and it has elastic fibers that provide stretch recoil properties. It has collagen fibers that provide strength, and it has cleavage lines because most of the collagen fibers are parallel to the skin surface. And then it is externally invisible, but it's important to surgeons because incisions parallel to the cleavage lines gap less and heal more readily. Okay, I'm going to explain to you two skin markings. Cool. So blisters form from acute short-term trauma, which is repeatedly injuring the same place, and they are fluid-filled pockets that separate the epidermal and dermal layers, and their purpose is to cool down the nerves, and you should not pop them when you get them, okay? Mm-hmm. And then freckles are local, which means that they're in one place, accumulations of melanin. You can be genetically predisposed to freckles, or you can get them from sun exposure because the UV rays stimulate the melanin production. Cool?
Yeah.
There are three main pigments in the skin. The first one is melanin, and it's only one of the three that is actually made in the skin. There are two forms, reddish yellow and brownish black, and they are produced in the melanocytes. It shows up in skin color, freckles, and tan. The second one is keratin, which is not made in the skin. It's a yellowish-orange pigment, and it accumulates in the stratum corneum and hypodermis. Keratin and melanin variations cause skin color to appear different in different people. And the third one is hemoglobin, which gives fair skin its pinkish hue, and it's located in the red blood cells of the dermal layer. And skin colors can be different and similar because, first of all, they differ because of genetics. Some people have more keratin or darker melanin, but everyone has the same amount of melanin, so it's just like your skin color is just a reflection of how prominent the melanin is and how dark it is, because everyone really does have the same amount of it. There can be diseases associated with skin color, and 3 of them are jaundice, pallor, and cyanosis. Jaundice is a liver disorder that causes the skin to appear yellowish. Pallor causes you to appear very pale, and it can be caused by anemia, low blood pressure, fear, or anger. And cyanosis is a blue skin color that comes from low oxygenation of the hemoglobin.
Hair is located everywhere but palms, soles of the feet, lips, nipples, and parts of external genitalia. The function of hair is to protect your head from sunlight, heat loss, and trauma.
The first skin appendage is hair, and the 2 main parts of hair are the hair shaft right here, and then the hair root, which is underneath. The shaft determines the texture and shape of your hair, so the difference between hair texture in different people is the flatter hair shaft is curlier hair, oval hair shaft is silkier, wavy hair, and the rounder it is, the straighter your hair will be. So, and then the 3 microscopic layers of hair are the medulla, the cortex, and the cuticle. The medulla is the very middle right here, and it is large cells and air pockets, soft keratin, and it's not present in fine hairs. And then the cortex surrounds the medulla, and the cortex, and then the cuticle is the outermost layer, which is a single layer of overlapping cells that, they overlap so the hair doesn't mat, and it's worn away at the tip of the hair, which exposes the cortex and medulla, and that's where you get split ends. So the hair follicle extends from the epidermal surface to the dermis, and it's part of it's in the dermis, part of it's in the epidermis. And the 3 layers are the peripheral connective tissue, which is on the outside, the glassy membrane, which goes around, and then the epithelial root sheath. So within hair, there's a bunch of different structures, and one of them is the hair bulb, which is the living part of the hair, and it has sensory nerve endings, and it has a deep end. And the hair matrix is the actively dividing area. The hair papilla is dermal tissue, and it's the blood supply for the hair nutrient. The erector pili muscle is this right here, and it is responsible for goosebumps, and it's a smooth muscle that's attached to the hair follicle, which is right here. The 2 types of hair that are found on the body are vellus, which is the pale, fine body hair of children and adult females, and then there's terminal hair, which is the coarse, long hair of your eyebrows and scalp, and it appears in the axillary and pubic regions of both sexes at puberty, and it is also on the face and neck of adult males. Hair loss is alopecia, and it is hair thinning in both sexes after age 40, and then alopecia totalis causes total baldness, and that's more serious. The second appendage is the nail, and the nail's function is a protective cover for the distal dorsal surface of the fingers and toes, and we use the nails as tools to pick up things and scratch edges. So the parts of the nail start with the nail bed, which is right there, and it is the deep layer of the nail, and it's attached to the finger, and the nail matrix is right here, and it is proximal and responsible for growth. The lunule is the little moon here, and the thick white crescent over the nail matrix, and then the nail folds, the lateral and the proximal, which we also call the cuticle, the proximal right there, they cover the proximal and the lateral edges of the nail for protection. Now we're going to talk about glands. So sweat glands, their real name are sudoriferous glands, and they are located on all skin surfaces except for your nipples and part of your external genitalia. The function and location of the two main types are the eccrine glands and the apocrine glands. The eccrine glands, their function is thermal regulation, so they secrete sweat, which is 99% water, and their location is on your palms, the soles of your feet, and your forehead. And the apocrine glands secrete the gross stuff, which is like the sweat, the fatty substances, and proteins, and they are located on your axillary, your armpit, and your anal genital areas. Sebaceous glands location is the face, neck, and chest, and there's a small amount on the body and limbs, and there's none on thick skin. 3 facts about the sebaceous glands are they secrete sebum, which is an oily holocrine secretion that softens the hair and skin. They are relatively inactive till puberty, and most of them secrete into hair follicles. And then acne is an inflammation of the gland, and a pimple on the skin surface forms from bacteria.
Functions of the integumentary system are body temperature regulation, cutaneous sensation, and excretion. And body temperature regulation, basically your body works best in a certain temperature range, and when it gets too hot or too cold, your integumentary system has to fix it. And it helps to fix it. And if the temperature rises, dermal vessels dilate and there's increased sweat gland activity to cool the body. A personal story about this one is when I go for runs in the summer, it gets really hot, especially because of the temperature outside. My body temperature becomes too high and I start to sweat a lot. This is because of the increased sweat gland activity, because my body is trying to cool me down and return me to a temperature range of 88 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Cutaneous sensations are part of the nervous system. They detect temperature, touch, and pain. And then excretion eliminates waste through sweat.
Okay, now we're going to talk about skin cancer. So the risk factors of skin cancer are overexposure to UV radiation and frequent irritation of the skin. The 3 major types are basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, and melanoma, which is the most serious.
Cool.
Basal cell carcinoma is the most common, and it's shiny domes that develop central ulcers, but it can be cured pretty easily 99% of the time by surgical procedures. Squamous cell carcinoma is the second most common. It involves the keratinocytes of the stratum spinosum, and it's scaly and red, often on the head, and it spreads pretty quickly, but it can be fixed by radiation therapy or removed surgically. Melanoma is the cancer of the melanocytes. It is the most dangerous, and it spreads really quickly, and it's pretty resistant to chemo, so that makes it the most serious. And it can be treated by a wide surgical incision with immunotherapy. The 4 key steps to detect melanoma early is the ABCD rule, and the A stands for asymmetry, which is when 2 sides of the pigmented area don't match. And the B stands for border irregularity, when the sides of it exhibit indentations. The C stands for color, which it's a sign of melanoma when there are several colors. That can be black, brown, tan, and sometimes even red or blue. And the D stands for diameter, which is when the spot is larger than 6 millimeters, which is a pencil eraser size. It's you should be concerned. And our last thing that we're going to talk about is burns. So 1st-degree burns are when only the epidermis is damaged, and it's basically just redness, edema, which is swelling, and pain. And then 2nd degree is, that's your epidermis. Okay, 2nd degree is when there's epidermal and upper dermal damage, so it's going a little deeper than 1st degree, and blisters will appear. And then, so for the 3rd degree burns, the full thickness of the skin is involved. The skin can turn grayish white, cherry red, or it can be blackened, and it's actually not even painful because all of the nerve endings are destroyed or swollen. Yeah, that's it could be full thick, so whatever. And skin grafting is usually necessary to help with the 3rd degree burns. So the rule of 9s is used to estimate how much of the body is affected by the burns, and basically the body's divided into 11 areas, and each of them takes up 9% plus 1% for the genital area, and it estimates the volume of the fluid lost. Thank you.